Hey, it's Arroe, and this is Podfest 35. 3 back-to-back conversations with real people of entertainment, politics, science, medicine, and/or cooking in their own kitchen. On Podfest 35, we'll feature my 2016 conversation with the frontman of Duran Duran, Mr. Simon Le Bon. Then, we'll get into some really funny bantering with actor-comedian Dusty Slay before wrapping things up with the legendary music engineer, the one and only Eddie Kramer, as we celebrate Jimi Hendrix. This is Podfest 35. Hey, it's Arroe on iHeartRadio. Unplugged and totally uncut with Simon Le Bon from Duran Duran. You guys are the hardest working band in music. You are endless with creativity in the studio and inventing new sounds to taking it out on the road. How is it
That's extraordinary, is it? The hardest working and probably the lowest paid.
And yet you do so much to so many people's lives.
Kidding. We love to work. We just love to get out there and do it. It's not just the live shows. It's, we love making the records and the whole thing.
Well, the critics are loving the new album. It had to have been fun to be in the studio to put that together.
The past is another country. The present will never last.
Well, it was actually, and it's funny. You look back and you realise that some albums were more fun than others in the making, and Paper Gods is definitely one of the most fun. And that had a lot to do with the kind of the parameters that we set ourselves before. I mean, the big thing is that we just gave ourselves time. We decided, we were not signed to any record label for this record until much later on. We just said, well, we're not going to stick anything out there until it's absolutely right. And we spent a good year just experimenting, really, seeing what we thought was going to work. And then at that point, after about a year, we got Ben Hudson came on board, and he really kind of focused the energy and helped us choose the really good stuff, and give it that sort of sonic direction that the album has got.
Bound to the paper gods in a world that is paper thin. Fools in town in the sky are ruling now.
How are you protecting that voice? Because it hasn't changed where most musicians would be going into a lower octave.
Yeah, well, I think there's, singing is a very physical job. And for me, it's about maintaining total body fitness. You've got to have a good platform, so you've got to have good, strong legs to stand on. You've got to have a good, strong frame, upper body sort of framework to be able to resonate. So I keep myself strong, and obviously the whole breathing thing, diaphragm, and that is really important. So it's mostly a question of keeping strong. And the other thing is, I've had a few episodes in my life where I've made significant developments in my technique, usually as a result of some kind of vocal breakdown, which is what happened on the last tour. And I learned a much better technique of sound production.
I've always wondered where John Lennon had to really strain his vocals with Twist and Shout, and when you did Wild Boys, I always wanted to know how you were able to protect your vocals, because you took it to a range that was just mind-blowing.
Well, yeah, but that's really true. The thing is that song was out of my range. It was, we perform that song now one whole tone lower than the record, because it was too high. I also shouted it, and those were the days when I used to blow my voice out on a regular basis. Now I can sing the chorus of that song in the new key without damaging my voice. You have to kind of. You think of your voice as I think of it as a tube, really, with a vibrator in the middle. There, that's a nice image, isn't it? A tube with a vibrator in it. And what you want to do is open the tube up and keep it as straight as possible to give it the maximum amount of resonance for the vibrator to do its job. If you push, and that's funny. If you look at John Lennon and the way if you look at films of him. He does this thing that Liam Gallagher does where he sticks his chin forward. And if you can imagine taking his tube and holding it at both ends and moving your hands apart from each other, one above the other, without changing the angle, you squash the tube and it flattens in the middle where you bend it and you flatten it. And that's what happens when you stick your chin out when you're singing. Now, I used to sing like that. I've learned not to. Now I've learned to pull my chin in and keep that tube straight. This is really technical stuff we're talking about.
Well, it is because
is this interesting?
Your voice acting on the Weekend Sailor is what really catches my attention, because I wanted to know how you could go from music to sharing a story like that, because storytelling as a narrator, that's a well-defined art, and that was the connection there.
I love telling stories, though. I think that, I love telling jokes. I like telling stories at dinner time. I've got some good stories to tell. And it's sort of it is all part of the same thing. It's part of the thing that makes me want to get up on stage in front of people and sing. I want to entertain. It's not just being the centre of attention. I know that I can make people feel good.
You've never been that guy that walks up there with the crowd and look at them as being a wall. It's almost like you're participating with the celebration of sound.
Yeah, well, I've always thought that a really good concert includes the audience as part of the show. I mean, it takes two. It takes the band as the sort of the initiators, as the catalysts, but the audience have to be the accelerators. The audience is the people who make the show really go off with a bang, and you've got to understand that, and you've got to be able to maintain a sort of ring of energy that kind of comes from the band to the audience and then back to the band, and it multiplies and gets bigger.
Is that the reason, like when you put the new album together, that Paper Gods, that you explore more because you know that you're going to bring it to life in front of those people, and it's almost like you can see the future and then you go to the future?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons why we explored. There is that one, yes, but there's also the fact that we'd made a very the preceding album, All You Need Is Now, which was true to the brief that Mark Ronson gave us, which is, I want Duran Duran to reclaim the 80s. We did that, and we wanted to move on from there. We didn't want to make the same album again. We really wanted to do something that was modern and could stand up next to modern music. And that's really what we did, and you can't achieve that unless you're willing to experiment and explore.
But I won't cry for yesterday. There's an ordinary world. Somehow I have to find. And as I try to make my way to the ordinary world, I will learn to survive.
One of your experiments is Katie, that's on your website, where people get to ask her questions and stuff about the band.
Yeah.
That's it. That's incredible, because that means that you guys aren't afraid to reach out there and socially network with your fans.
Yeah, no, Caddy's a really important part of our setup, actually, because she provides that link to the fans when we're off stage, and you get to find out a lot about Duran Duran from listening to what the fans say, and our online presence, and the whole setup is a very important part of our setup.
Is there ever going to be an opportunity for Duran Duran to do something with a full orchestra, because your music is so beyond pop?
Yes, yeah. We've done it. We've already done it once, actually. We did something in Florida some years ago. Beck's dad is a classical musician, and he scored a whole load of Duran Duran songs for the orchestra, and we played it with a live orchestra some years ago, and it was magnificent. And it's something we'd like to do again, definitely.
It just shows that you guys are so beyond the now, because you gave us a sound in the 1980s, and now that your journey forward is just taking us right with you.
Yeah, I think. Well, we just love music.
We've gone too far this time, but I'm dancing on the Valentine.
I got to tell you one of my favorite Duran Duran stories. I was up in Montana when the Reflex came out, and we were playing it in the wintertime and had to play it only in the day, because at night when it was 42 below zero, the yeah sounds like a car trying to start. And so so listeners would go, "Why are you always playing that song that sounds like a car trying to start?"
Oh, really? That's hilarious.
So
why don't you start it? Why? Great. You've got to love that.
So why, don't you use it? Try not to bruise it. Buy time, don't lose it. To reflex is a lonely child who's waiting by the pole. To reflex is in charge of finding treasure in the dark. And watching over lucky clover, isn't that bizarre? Everything the reflex does leaves the answer with a question mark. The reflex, what a game, is hiding all the cards. To
first, a few laughs from this comedian that'll just knock you over. And when we come back, we'll be unplugged and totally uncut with Dusty Slay.
My parents got divorced when I was 2. Then there was a custody battle. My mom lost, so I had to go live with her. That's true. Can't make that up. You ever hear people say that? They tell you some story and they go, "You can't make that up." It's like, you know what? You can. It's called telling a lie. People do that all the time. They devoted a whole section in the library to people that just made that up. Fiction. Fiction's what we call that. A lot of people don't get that joke, you know what I mean? Not a lot of readers out there. I'm one of them. I don't like to read books. I don't like reading. I'll tell you why I don't like to read. When I was a little kid, there was this TV show called Reading Rainbow. You guys remember that show? Yeah. Had a host on there, a guy named LeVar Burton, trying to get everybody to read books all the time. Then he showed up on Star Trek blind.
Hey, how are you? Hey, it's Dusty Slay.
What are you doing, dude?
Oh, I'm just hanging out. What are you up to?
Well, that's very Arkansas of you to say that.
Yeah.
Well, I thought I would record this conversation today and send it up to the government, because I think your humor needs to be a medical tax write-off every year.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, let's send it out. Let's get it tweeted out, you know?
Hey, congratulations on your current success. I mean, to team up with ABC like you have, man, I'm telling you, this is really going to open up a brand new door for you.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm very excited about it.
How'd you get your foot in that door anyway? Was it just knocking on Jimmy Kimmel's door or even something like that?
Well, you know, last year was a great year for me. I did Jimmy Kimmel in January, and then about midway in the year, I got invited to do the Just for Laughs Comedy Festival in Montreal. And when I did that, I was seen by the people from The Tonight Show and people from ABC. And so the people from ABC were very interested in what I had going on. And then I did The Tonight Show 2 weeks later and really nailed that. And that hammered it home. And so I've been working with ABC since then, and we've been developing a script for a pilot, and I'm just kind of waiting to see what ABC has to say.
So has that changed the atmosphere when you go into a Comedy Zone type building and you're in the green room and they're about ready to introduce you? Has it changed you at all now that you've reached this level?
Well, I think the only thing that has changed is, for one, I got new management, new agents, and they're able to really get me into the great clubs. So I'm very excited about that. But my confidence level is just higher, Other than that, I'm the same dude. But I feel more confident now.
And that I'm glad you said that about the confidence and stuff, because a lot of people don't realize how human comedians are. You guys are probably more human than most people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we go up and, we're just hoping that audience finds these jokes funny. I mean, you know what I mean? Because it's like you could do the same jokes at clubs all over the country, and then you go to one club and it seems like that everyone in that audience doesn't find you as funny as everyone else in the country does.
Wow.
But I mean, I'm not bombing out here, but I definitely have rooms where I go into and I'm like, oh, okay, you guys aren't into this. I don't know what this is about. And then I just wave and tell them we're having a good time, and then we get through it.
I grew up in the state of Montana, where right there in the center of the city, we had horses in the backyard. That was our backyard. You grew up in a dang trailer park in Alabama. I mean, dude, that's where life begins, isn't it?
That's right. I mean, I grew up in a trailer park, and it wasn't that fun. So I'm not sure why they call it a park. I mean, there wasn't no rides in there. We didn't have water slides or anything. We had like an occasional slip and slide, or like an old tarp with some Dawn dish detergent on it.
Was it one of those old metal trailers that you grew up in?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was an '80s model for sure.
God.
I mean, we moved in it in '84, and I mean, it was a little older than that, but I mean, we had the particle board floors that swell up over time and it falls through, and but we owned the trailer, so we were a bit high class, and so we had the floors replaced.
Did you have shag carpeting in there?
We did have brown. It was brown shag carpeting, but we did have it. We got one of those rainbow vacuum cleaners. That was the nicest thing we owned, was a rainbow vacuum cleaner. You remember those?
Oh, of course I do.
You vacuum that shag carpet and all that stuff goes into that little trough of water there.
That's right.
That's gross.
It created redneck stew is what it did.
Yeah, it did. We just leave that sitting. I remember just leaving that sitting outside. We just disconnected and just set it out on the porch, Now,
has your life changed in any way? Because there are times that I'll be walking around my own house here in North Carolina, and I'll sit there and go, oh, my God, did my dad move in here? Because my dad would keep this outside.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm turning into my dad sometimes. And my mom, too. I mean, it's like, I don't know what's happening, but everything that I said wouldn't happen happens,
So you're going to be performing at the Grand Ole Opry. I mean, you got the hat, you got the laughter. Are you the reincarnation of Minnie Pearl?
Well, I hope so. I hope so. Instead of howdy, I'm going, we're having a good time,
How do you write for that audience? Because, they're coming in there to hear those banjos and those steel guitars.
Well, I mean, I don't think I'm going to write anything new for that audience. I'm just going to pick the jokes that I think that they'll like the best. But I like to think that I have pretty universal appeal anyway. So I'm just going to go out there talking about Goodwill TVs and doing my hat jokes, and we're going to have a good time.
Now, I picked up along the way that you have a connection with Charleston. Are we talking about Charleston, South Carolina?
Yeah, Charleston, South Carolina. I lived there for 10 years.
Dude, that is my favorite place on the planet. That's where my ashes are going, right there to that city, man.
I love it.
What?
Yeah, I lived on James Island for a while, lived on Folly Beach for a year, lived downtown Charleston for about 5.
How many times did you get over there to see that Festival of Lights and kind of hang out with the campers?
Oh, I think I only did that one time.
What?
I know. I drank the entire time I lived there. I had to quit drinking because I used to black out all the time, Nothing good ever happens when you black out. No one's ever like, man, you blacked out last night, but I appreciate you helping with those taxes.
I would love to have a serious buzz one time and go down there to Folly Beach and stand on the shore and start shouting out there at that lighthouse that's out there in the middle of the water.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I've done that. I've definitely done that on Sullivan's Island.
I've
yelled at that. Yeah, that lighthouse is pretty fancy.
I mean, it's one of those things. Back in the 1980s, when I would go down to Charleston, that lighthouse was still connected to land, and then Hurricane Hugo kind of screwed things up a bit.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I was never. I moved there after Hugo, so I missed all that.
Wow. So comedy in 2019, it seems like there's a lot of people that are really watching what you guys are saying. How has that infected or affected what you're doing?
Well, I live in a constant state of paranoia, right? So I'm always worried about what I'm saying. So I've been watching myself for years. I feel like PC culture is just catching up to me, you know?
So when you're writing and stuff like that, you a lot of chicken scratch and all that kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I used to, when I lived in Charleston, I would be like, people from my church would come and I would go, oh, no, people from my church are coming. What do I got to take out of my set? So I just decided a long time ago that I'm just going to write jokes that don't offend anyone and figure out how to make all that funny. And so that's what I've done. I just talk about me, talk about growing up, you know, and it's fun. People have a good time.
And I love the way that people react to you, because it really is a medicinal, because people go there, they've had a real crap day with their boss, and they watch you, and all of a sudden they're going home in a great mood.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to not laugh at a guy that just, because I grew up poor, not real poor. We just didn't have everything, like I never got ice cream growing up. My mom used to pour milk into a bowl. She'd call me into the room and go, well, you're too late.
That's like making Rice Krispie treats out of cornflakes,
That's right. Not quite. We used to eat cornflakes and bacon. Not in the same bowl, but a side of bacon, eat cornflakes. I don't know why that's delicious, but it is.
Well, Elvis and his peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Yeah,
it was peanut
exactly.
butter, jelly, and banana sandwiches.
Those are delicious, too. I love it. We used to eat just banana sandwiches growing up.
With mayonnaise?
Bananas and mayonnaise, yeah. Yep. That's the only time I like mayonnaise. That and then tartar sauce. Otherwise, I'm not into it.
I swear to God, that's the only reason why I go to McDonald's for that damn fish sandwich. It has nothing to do with the fish. It's all about that tartar sauce.
The tartar sauce is great. I mean, we don't use it enough.
So now, are you on tour? What's happening? Where are we going to be seeing you? Are you going to hang out in the South here for a little bit?
Well, I'm all over the place, actually. I travel about 45 weeks a year, I would say. I mean, I'm on the road all the time. I stay at a lot of hotels. I don't always get the best hotels. I was in this hotel recently, and they had a sign inside the hotel room that said, not responsible for stolen items. So I took some stuff, Yeah. I was like, I'm not responsible either. I don't even work here.
That's funny. Now, a lot of comedians have jumped onto the podcast bandwagon. Are you headed in that direction?
Yeah, I have my wife does comedy too, and we have a podcast called the We're Having a Good Time podcast, and we put it out. We put one out every week, just kind of documenting our travels and what it's like to be comics on the road.
Now, you're not in the same city every night of the week. I mean, at the same time, are you? I mean, you guys have got to be a whole nation apart.
Well, we like to, I like to go out for the weekend. I'll go out like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, come back Sunday. So we usually spend like at least Monday and Tuesday at home together.
The rest of us are out camping, and you're out there doing the comedy.
That's right. I'm like a modern day. I'm like a road camper. I used to in my car. I have a big Tupperware thing that I carry. I have a hot plate. I have pots and pans. I mean, I'm basically camping all the time.
That's right.
When I'm flying, I can't do it, but I'm fancier when I'm flying.
How do you keep it positive, man? Because I know in radio, when I have to show up on this microphone 6 days a week, I mean, it really pays. It plays hard on your heart.
Well, I mean, for me, it's like no matter how I feel, when I walk out, when I get to the comedy club, instantly energy hits me and I start feeling good. And then when I hit the stage, like last night I did a show and I didn't feel that good. And the moment I got up to the mic, all that went away and I was like, I feel great. This is amazing.
One of the things I've been doing as a writer over the past year, and because I have an inspirational channel, and I totally call out creativity as it is an addiction. Do you agree that creativity is an addiction?
Yeah, 100%. I think that the problem with social media, right, is we get so into being entertained that I find that I'm annoyed by social media less when I'm doing the entertaining versus being entertained, because I'm working, I'm creating things.
Yep.
Yep. And I think creativity, I mean, whenever a comedian writes a new joke and it works, I mean, there's no greater feeling than that, and I imagine that would be the same for every creative field.
Absolutely. So what's the best place for someone to follow you?
My Instagram page is the best, at Dusty Slay, but I have a website, dustyslay.com, and it has a link for everything. My Facebook fan page is also pretty fun, and the podcast, We're Having a Good Time podcast, is on iTunes, Spotify, But again, it's all linked there in my website.
Man, I'm telling you, you're going to find your way into movies. There's just something about you that's going to put you on that big screen.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that. I'm excited.
Good morning, Arroe. I'm doing great.
This project that you are revealing to the rest of the world, Jimi Hendrix in Maui, is such... you have done so much work on this in the way that I'm being transported to Maui, and it really feels like it just happened last week.
Wow. So you wanted to be there with all the folks being stoned out of their minds, sitting in a semicircle around Jimi Hendrix, and with your astrological sign in front of you so you know where you have to sit, right?
Yeah. What a cool concept, though, because when I saw that, it was like, I'm going, wow, that would be a true connection with the fans as well as the performance.
Well, it definitely was. Jimmy certainly, you can see by the footage, Jimmy was really enjoying himself, and so was the band. And they were playing at the top of their game.
When you come across a project like this, because I mean, I've not seen a lot of the footage on this before. What is it like for you to open up a door and there it is? Because your imagination, it must take off immediately.
Well, it's a little bit of it's a lot of work. First, the footage, unfortunately, was not as lengthy as it could have been. Now, imagine if you're one of the folks involved in this movie, and by the way, the documentary is about the making of Rainbow Bridge, which was a bit of a disaster as a movie. And your task is to film Jimi Hendrix. Can you imagine you're filming Jimi Hendrix on the side of a volcano with 55-mile-an-hour winds blowing, and guess what? You run out of filming Jimi Hendrix. Can you imagine what was going on in these people's minds and what state they were in?
Well, what was really interesting is that when I read about the volcano and the 50-mile-an-hour winds and stuff like that, I'm going, okay, now I have to go back and watch it again just to find out how it affected them. It didn't. It's the whole entire band was just right in tune and on time.
Yeah. So that's the good news is that the audio guys were actually recording the whole thing. The film guys were out of it. But thank God they did, the audio guys, because we included both shows were recorded. They hadn't been released before, the audio, and I just remixed it. So the tapes weren't in the best shape as you can imagine. It was 8-track, right?
Oh.
Actually, it wasn't even 8-track, because the 8th track was the pulse tone for the cameras. So it was only 7 tracks of audio. And I managed to remix it and make it sound halfway decent.
So now when you get the opportunity to go back in there and remix it, I mean, that puts you really up close and personal, next to Jimmy's fingers itself. It has to still amaze you on what he was capable of doing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, every time we put up a tape of Jimmy's, and this particular one is really good because the band, as I said, they're playing tremendously. I mean, they just finished a big show in Honolulu a few days before that, 15,000 people, right? And Jimmy was getting paid $100,000 plus in those days. And then he had to come across to Maui because his manager said, hey, come on across, we've got this little show for you to do. And this was supposed to be in their vacation, you know.
Well, and this was really kind of a deal, wasn't it, that Jeffrey tried to get set up with Warner Brothers?
Yeah, he did. I mean, I think it did go through Warner Bros., but he was quite an operator, to say the least. But I think he got sold a bill of goods for the Rainbow Bridge picture,
which was a belly flop. But the thing about it is, because weren't they were trying to create a B flick kind of film that would become a cult classic, but wasn't it because that Rainbow Bridge, the music was not featured on the album, that caused some consumer confusion?
Oh, yeah, the whole thing was confusing, which is why we made this documentary to reveal the madness, the great absolute nuttiness. These stone filmmakers just didn't know which end was up.
Now, Mitch Mitchell on the drums. The way that he went in there. Now, what was that like for you to during that time when you went in there and remastered those drums? And he was. Did you just punch edit? How did you get him in there to get those drums on there perfectly?
Well, when we got the tapes back from that show in late 1970, after Jimmy had died, you know, we couldn't go back into the studio to do anything for a few months. It took a while to sort of, you know, get the juices up to go in the studio. So Mitch and I went in, started listening, and we all realized after the first tape, Mitch said to me, I got to redo some of my drums. I said, you absolutely have to.
Yeah.
So he studied it, listened to it. We had a little projector set up for him, and he watched the film, rehearsed a couple of times, punched it in. It was amazing. In one take, he would get a 10-minute solo, 10-minute drum track. That was perfect. It was right in sync. He was very dedicated, not only to his craft, but also to the memory of Jimmy.
So after Rainbow Bridge, Jimmy heads back to the Electric Lady Studios. What was it like for him that finally his vision was coming true with that studio? And what was it like for you that you got to be in that studio?
Well, I designed the studio for him, put it together. We built it for him. John Stark was the studio architect. I was the engineer architect, so to speak, and we built it with Jimmy in mind. This was his house. This was his home. And he loved that studio. He was very efficient and worked extremely well in those days. You know, he loved coming in there. He would be on time, which was amazing.
Yeah.
And everything was dialed in for him. He'd walk in. We'd be set up in minutes as opposed to messing around, you know, for days. So this was a joy for him.
Well, one of the things, some of my favorite pictures of Jimmy, sure, are the concert shots, but they were also the pictures inside the Electric Lady Studios, because it almost felt like that he was, you know, like the king of the world. But he was very satisfied to be in that place.
Well, he lived around the corner in the village. He could walk from his apartment. It took him 5 minutes. Nobody messed with him on the street. He would carry his guitar. He would come downstairs, set up. We'd be ready for him. And the studio was state-of-the-art. This was a studio that was built for the artist. No studio in the world had ever looked like this, you know, with all the lights. He would say to me, hey, man, I want some green, I want some purple, I want some red. He would tell me all these different colors, and we'd set the mood in the studio, and the walls of the studio would be washed in these different colors. So this was an environment made for Jimi Hendrix.
Wow. Well, congratulations on this project. As usual, you are keeping a legacy very much alive, and you are keeping the history of music just moving forward, which is where it needs to be.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate your comments.
Please come back to the show anytime in the future, Eddie. The door is always going to be open for you, sir.
I'll be there, my friend. Just, you know, as soon as I've got something I want to play, I'll give you a ring, and let's do a longer show.
Excellent, man. Be brilliant today, okay?
I hope so. From your words to God's ears.